Welcome to Inside the Upside Down, where tonight we are talking hoaxes, frauds, and urban legends. Coming up next. Welcome to Inside the Upside Down. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, is Shana Wankel, our chat Shananigator from Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I almost stumbled over that.
It's been a long day.
It has been a long day. It's been a long week, and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah.
But here we are for another great episode of Inside the Upside Down. We're going to be talking about hoaxes, frauds, urban legends, inaccurate information, fake news, all of that fun stuff. We're mostly going to be like more of the modern stuff tonight. We'll get into some historic stuff later. But this one, I mean, we've done a like fake history show before. We've done some hoaxes before. We've dedicated some shows strictly like to Dear David. We'll touch on him a little bit later. So we've kind of done some smatterings of this here and there, but there's some other stuff that's come up here lately that I think we kind of need to dive into. Some things we'll readdress, more information coming out on other things. So I think it's one of those phenomena within our culture that we get like some little chunk, some little nugget of information that goes like way off in some crazy direction, and then you have somebody like Kim Kardashian who just headline reads and makes a mess of it.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. My dad gave me a fist pound the other night when I was telling him about that whole video. He's like, "You went after Kim Kardashian?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, that brought her up." He's like, "Yeah, you go get her." He gave me a fist pound. I'm like, "All right, thanks, Dad." So yeah, that's where we're starting. And of course, feel free to throw down some questions in the chat room about any hoaxes, frauds, urban legends that we're going to get into. But this one here that just came up, let me get into the tab here. There it is. There's the crazy looking creature that everybody is calling a Momo. It's like, what the hell is Momo? Momo doesn't even exist anymore. This sculpture here, and that's what it is. It's a sculpture, but this has been a hoax. It's straight up, it is a hoax. It's not real. I mean, the sculpture itself is real, but the story behind it is not. People do keep perpetuating the thing as supposedly being real, and people getting scared, and people getting killed or killing themselves. But none of those reports can be substantiated. It's like, oh, I heard from this person, I heard from that person. Even people that threw down in the comments of our video that we posted the other day are perpetuating this stuff, and it's like, no, those things never happen. It has all been a hoax, and this fear mongering has just gone rampant. Like you said, thanks, Kim. Yeah, she basically read a headline about this thing and blew the thing wide open and scared the crap out of everybody. You got teachers, parents, sheriffs, all kinds of authority figures involved that they're telling their kids about it. Hey, this is the thing, and it's not real. Don't get scared about it. But it's a fear that didn't need to happen. But basically, what this is, we'll give a little background on it. Like I said, it's a sculpture. Keisuke Iso in Japan. He's a artist. He created this for a horror show, a horror art show out there in Japan. So I have another photo here that kind of gives you, this is Momo at the art show. So we kind of bring the camera back a little bit, and it's basically stuck in the corner. It actually didn't get a lot of fanfare at the art show at all. It's only afterwards when some photos of it circulated around the internet. But the sculpture's gone. It disintegrated. He left it outside. He didn't really have a place for it in his studio. It didn't get much fanfare. Wasn't really built to last, so it disintegrated, and he threw it in the dumpster. So Robert Hanna, this Momo is an insult to the Momo, the monster of Missouri. Yeah, Chuck Banks kind of was bringing that up last on Edge of the Rabbit Hole, and I didn't understand that he meant the Missouri Monster. Honestly, I don't know where they got the name Momo, because what this thing is supposed to be depicting is Ubume. And Ubume it's a ghost. It's a Japanese legend of a ghost. And I'll show you Ubume. I don't know how easy it is to see it, but basically it's a Japanese legend of a ghost of a woman. A couple of different variations, whether she died in childbirth, just after childbirth, sometimes the child died as well, all these different things, different possibilities. And her ghost is seen there at the spot where the event happened, and her name is Ubume. Where the bird part of it comes into play is sometimes the lettering, because they use the different pictographs there for their letters and their words. Sometimes it's written in a like bird-like way, for lack of a better term. And it has to do with the way that they create their pictographs. And basically, it changes the meaning to a child-snatching bird. And so the whole Momo thing is a combination of those two things, the woman and the bird. So that's what it is. It is not real. Donna Gorton saying, first time I saw it, I thought it looked like a puppet. Yeah, when I first saw it was months ago. Because I know, like, it was a couple weeks ago or maybe a week ago or whatever it was, that you had sent me a link or show me a picture of it or whatever. And I was like, oh, I've seen that before. And it was like months ago.
Yeah.
And even like, I don't know, a few weeks back, I'd seen the picture pop up in my feed again. I was like, oh, there's that creepy thing again. And so it's something that's been around already for a little while, but this thing kind of percolated in the background and then blew up into this whole phenomenon that now we're, putting out all these different posters. BuzzFeed was out on the streets of New York, handing out flyers about it, just crazy stuff. There's people now that are talking about Momo love. And that sums it up right there. Massive eye roll.
I'm sad for humanity as a whole for many reasons. That's part of it.
That's a big part of it.
That's our future right there. We are doomed.
Yeah, it's in PSPR, Paranormal Pursuit. My kids are terrified of this thing. It's all the stories that all the kids are spreading. Yeah, exactly. And it is the way that it's spreading and being spread is that, they catch wind of it somewhere on social media. That's a creepy picture. And somebody basically what happened is, photos of this thing got out on the internet because of that art show. And somebody basically took a creepy picture, put a creepy story with it, put the two together, and it went viral. And we know the way humans are, and especially kids, they see the creepy picture, they hear a bit of the creepy story, and it gets, they'll spread it around, they'll repeat it, they'll add to it. There's people now that are, saying, no, it was real. I know that there was, somebody who, committed suicide over it and all this stuff. And it's like they don't want it to die. They want it to keep going, even though there is no substantiated anybody of ever hurting themselves over the thing. But they want to keep it going.
Maybe somebody needs to take that creepy little thing and Photoshop it to look not so creepy and let that become viral.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look what I found.
Yeah, but we see it in ghost stories too, where, we'll go to a haunted location and, we'll hear like all these vast numbers of different stories about this one particular location or what this one particular ghost or entity does at a location. And it snowballs into like all these other different things. So, we see that a lot with our other, just our own paranormal investigations. So, I mean, you've seen that at different places too.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we go to places, like I personally don't like to go in blind, just because, I feel like my brain knows the difference and can be like, okay, this is what we've heard, but let's reserve judgment until something actually happens. I don't believe that my mind is going to play tricks on me. I feel pretty have sound mind most of the time. So I kind of feel like it's not going to play tricks on me. I hope.
Yeah. PSPR, it says it's like Bloody Mary and Candyman folklore. Yeah, exactly. It's basically the same thing. This is a modern version of it. Back then it would take a lot longer for it to percolate and get moving along from region to region, and they'd kind of twist it on their own. It would take years, decades sometimes, for the story to develop and churn. But this one, because we have the internet, it's so much faster, and it just blows up into these huge phenomenons. Kathy Cillian too. It reminds me of something out of Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah, it kind of has that look. Definitely kind of has that look. And he made it for a horror show, a horror art show. So let's see.
But will people give this thing enough energy that it manifests into something?
Well, and seeing Donna Gorton just asked, could this become a tulpa? So yeah, that's one of those things. We're going to talk about it here in a bit with Slender Man. That, okay, is there an entity out there that's going to say, I want to become Momo? Look, and just take that thing and become Momo. I don't know. Even when you talk Slender Man, I mean, it's just a theory that maybe it's become a tulpa. You have no idea if it really has. Because a lot of the people that say that they've actually seen him, are they a credible witness? A lot of them, again, are young, impressionable kids. We'll talk about that too. That want to perpetuate the story. That want to. I mean, I don't know if we all did it as kids, but especially like as a creative kid, you want to be able to add your own twist to it. You hear some cool story and be like, oh, I can one up that, or oh, I could add some other cool element to that story. It's like there's a part of you that almost wants it to be real, but there's a part of you that also knows it's not, and you want to add to that story, and you want to keep it going. Like, this is the cool story I want to see see it keep going. Here, I'm going to add something to it. That happens. That seriously happens. So, Robert Hanna, Black-Eyed Children are pretty credible stories. There's some interesting ones there. Definitely some interesting Black-Eyed Children stories. Of course, Shadow People. We talk about Shadow People a lot on here, primarily because I've had a lot of Shadow People experiences. So, Kathy Cillian too. I think what's wrong is that targeted towards such a young age group. Yeah, and that is absolutely what's terrible. That it did target kids. And a lot of these things out on the internet do target kids, and we'll get to that's Momo, but there's go on, turn off. Okay, there's this guy too. Slender Man. It's kind of the same but different. When you're talking, is it now a tulpa, or the way it used the internet. It's another one of those things where it's become that modern urban legend, that modern folklore, the modern means of storytelling that has propelled this thing. I almost kind of want to say, it's a good thing that the movie bombed, because it kind of took some of the steam off of this. But with this one, yeah, this is where it originated. It was a Photoshop project. Slender Man has never been real, and I think that's important for people to understand with these things. Momo was never real. Japanese legend. The guy created some artwork for it, and that's where it was. With Slender Man, it was a Photoshop project on a forum, on a website. It basically, they would do little things like this, little, hey, let's have a little Photoshop contest. And this one was, make a creepy picture. And this is what he did. He put this tall, creepy guy in the background of these kids. And he put a little story with it that was all of about 3 lines. And it became very popular. The user's name was Victor Surges. Eric Knudsen is his real name, on the Something Awful forums. And so people liked that. So we came up with some other photos. People started coming up with their own Slender Man photos and coming up with their own little pieces of story. And so, over time, all of this lore that was completely untrue grew up out of nowhere. Out of this one, I won't say nowhere, but out of this one post, it just sprouted into all these different things. And so, Creepypasta got a hold of it, put it on their website. There's a Creepypasta wiki that keeps track of like all the stories that Creepypasta has and all the information. Like if there's a story like Slender Man where people keep adding and adding and adding and adding, then they'll keep track to it. And they came up with there's almost 200 pages worth of information about this fictional character. So which to me is very creative. And as a writer, I'm like, well, I wish one of my pieces of writing would get pretty popular like that. But none of it was true. You could see influences of like shadow people and things like that in there, in different urban legends and things like that. But none of it was ever true. So yeah, Tom McNicholas talked about Amityville Ghost Boy pick, and Jared's already talking about movies and stuff like that. Yeah, we'll get into some of the different movies and whatnot here in a little bit. So yeah, the Slender Man movie bombed, which I think kind of took some steam off of it, which was kind of a good thing. And the thing that really kind of blew the Slender Man thing out in the open was the girls. And you want to talk about affecting kids and how these things can go too far. And that was the girls, Anissa Weir and Morgan Geyser, who tried to kill their friend. They were almost successful. They were very, very close to doing that. And I'm trying to get to the photo. Where is it? It's down here. So that's these 2 girls. Yeah, they basically latched onto Slender Man. One of the things that came up in the storytelling of Slender Man was they basically ended up saying that Slender Man was bullied when he was a kid. And they actually had little drawings of a little Slender Man guy being insulted. And a lot of kids can relate to that. So these girls didn't have a lot of friends. They kind of befriended each other. And I think it was Anissa that first got into the Slender Man thing, and so she would share that with Morgan, and they just really dove headlong into it. The girl that they ended up trying to kill, not really so much, but she was still part of their little group, and they thought, just from reading the stories, that they were going to become quote-unquote proxies of Slender Man or his servants and go get to live with him out in the Slender Mansion in the forest, which is really, really sad. It's there was a disconnect there. They do say that the girls have schizophrenia and things like that. So there was a obvious disconnect there of not understanding that everything that they were reading was fictional. And I wonder, though, they were probably a little older for it. But see, I remember being a kid, and there was I forget, it was, what was the cartoon? But in any case, I had convinced my friends next door neighbors and my sister, that we were going to go meet them. We were going to go walk to Hollywood and go meet them. And so, we're walking through the woods, basically down the hill, and our parents thought we ran away, which we hadn't. We were just going to go meet the cartoon characters. So it's a disconnect from reality. And we got picked up down at the bottom of the hill by the one girl's aunt. Like I said, I was younger than they were 12 at that. So, I mean, is it just a complete disconnect from reality, or they should have known better? I mean,
I must have led just a very sheltered life.
It's like, what are you talking about?
I don't have any stories like that.
You don't have any stories like that?
I don't.
Yeah, because I wasn't trying to run away. I just wanted to go meet the cartoon characters.
Yeah,
because even one of the, I can't remember which it was, one of the girls or maybe it was my sister. I don't know. They were like, well, they're not real. I'm like, yeah, but there could be. We won't know until we go and find out. Somehow you convince yourself that it's going to be real. And I wonder if that's happened with them. And I wonder if, and not just in this particular situation, but if that happens in other, urban legends, in fairy tales, and in all that other stuff, where people start convincing themselves, even though somewhere in their head they're like, I know that's not real, but they start convincing themselves it is.
That's why I never experienced anything as a kid, because I was like filter like completely
right.
I was like Fort Knox up in there. I must have had no imagination, because I don't remember anything like that.
So Donna Gorton saying too young to get a diagnosis of schizophrenia. You'd rule out at best. Yeah, they were 12 when it happened. They're 15 now. Or maybe it was 15 last year when the sentencing was handed down. So I don't know if they got diagnosed with that at 12 or if they got diagnosed at 15 when they got sentenced. But schizophrenia was there in the mix for sure. Let's see what else. So Candy saying no adult supervision. What's kind of sad, actually. That's what I
was going to ask. Where the hell were their parents?
Where are the parents? And like HBO had a documentary on this. Beware the Slender Man, and the one father was, he was talking about like their whole daily routine, and just broke everything down. He's like, unless I was sitting in her room 24/7. While she did every single little thing, what else could I have possibly done? And what he was blaming was because he didn't have, I guess if I remember correctly, the family had like one computer. They were only used the TV downstairs and, stuff like that. But I guess the schools insisted for educational purposes that they all had to get iPads. And so she had the iPad in her room, for her schoolwork, but of course she was getting on the internet and discovering all this other stuff, which is, I guess, what happened.
Firewalls? Like, don't they have like privacy?
I mean, well, that's a couple of things to take into consideration. One, does he know how to do that? I mean, I know how to do that because that's my career for the last 30 years. He might not know how to do that, and if he even did have an inkling of, well, okay, maybe there are some restrictions I should do, firewall sort of stuff, he wouldn't have known to like block Slender Man, because he as an adult had no idea what Slender Man even was. She discovered it on the internet.
Search history.
He could have gone through her search history if he knew how to go through her search history. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those where you just, like I said, he's like, unless I was sitting there, he mapped out their whole day. So, let's see what you guys have down here. So Donna says, psych community tries avoiding full-fledged diagnosis till adulthood to avoid it being a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm just telling you what they said in the case, that they diagnosed him with schizophrenia. So mean, I don't know if they do things different in Wisconsin than New York. I don't know. But I think there was a, Robert Hanna. What about the old Bloody Mary urban legend? Yeah, I mean, that's one that's been, years and years and years of going through the ringer and being morphed. I mean, Bloody Mary was Mary Tudor. After Henry VIII died and Mary took over, she basically wanted to flip the whole religion thing back around and make everything Catholic again after he had made it Protestant. And so she was killing people left and right. Not that King Henry VIII was any, saint or anything, since he had a lot of people executed too. So, but she was nicknamed Bloody Mary for that. And,
ain't religion grand?
all in the name of religion, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, that's one of those where, years and you talk about years and years ago, where that became the say it 3 times in the mirror and all that stuff. I never played Bloody Mary. Did you?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. But you can go out on YouTube and find all kinds of Bloody Mary videos and people trying to play it. Yeah. Let's get into, those are kind of the 2 big ones. Go ahead.
I sometimes wonder, it cracks me up, because if I were a ghost and I just hanging back, I wonder what these people are going to be talking about day and here. That's like, wow, this is a chance for me to mess with somebody. They want to see Bloody Mary, I'll give them a Bloody Mary. Or the whole Charlie, whatever crap.
Oh, the Charlie thing. Yeah, that was, but
if
they were going to prove that
ghost-
was just a physics trick.
Yeah, if I'd be a
That
ghost,
was just a physics trick.
I'd be handing people what they're looking for.
Yeah, but see, that was another one that was going around the internet, a couple years ago. The whole Charlie, put your, pencil down on there, and kids are freaking themselves out over it. But it was just a little physics trick. It was cool, but yeah, and it's one of those. See, and I remember, I think it's one of those things as a kid that maybe you liked getting spooked a little bit or whatever, where we're down in my friend Ron's basement. I mean, we're high school at this point in time, and he and Dennis are telling me about, backwards messages on whichever one of Queen's album has Another One Bites the Dust. It's supposed to say, try to smoke marijuana. And so we're running it backwards, right? So that's the rumor, that's the legend. We're running the thing backwards. It does kind of sound like it a little bit. And then one of them, I think it was Ron, he amped the whole thing up even more. Like, well, if we're sitting here, listening to backwards messages, then that's going to summon Satan. I was like, so all of a sudden, we're all getting freaked out.
Well, that explains a lot then.
Explains a lot, huh?
Maybe.
But see, that's one of those things, like, telling ghost stories over campfire, roasting marshmallows, and it's one of the things you do is you try to spook each other. And I think these days, good stuff, huh? Mm-hmm. I think these days with the internet, we've amped that up, way past where it should be. It's no longer about getting a, goosebumps and that jump scare or anything. Now we're actually, threatening death and crazy ass bullshit like this. So, Diane Hilbert saying, I remember playing Beatles songs backwards, listening for Satan. Yeah, so I'm not the only one. It wasn't just me, Ron, and Dennis.
Yeah,
it's there's Diane Hilbert too.
I've never done anything like that, but maybe I did, and I'm just blocking it out. Maybe that's where bad luck comes from, and ancient people's following you around.
Right. There's Donna Gordon.
Maybe that's why. Donna
Gordon saying, but did you ever inhale, Mike? No, I never inhaled. I never took a puff, actually. So I didn't even try. So, which one are you drinking? This is It's Raining Zen stuff.
Ginger.
You notice Shauna's wearing the new It's Raining Zen shirt. So go check them out, Alton, Illinois.
Yep, but there's a orange ginger mint tea from Republic of Tea, but I buy all of my Republic of Tea from Zen, of course.
Yep.
Or I'm sorry, Indigo
Support.
Moon.
Well, it's Indigo Moon, but it's all they all
Shop
own
local.
It. Yeah. Shop local.
And if I can't find it at Zen, I'd rather not buy it, to be honest. But man, this one's smooth. I mean, the texture of it and the flavor is very robust, and I would definitely get a ginger. It's good for you. And if you
I'm glad you like it.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's really good.
So Rick Gabbard is saying, I never knew about the Charlie deal. Yeah, so basically it's you put the one pencil on top of the other or whatever it is, and you ask a yes or no question and it spins and it goes to the yes or no. But it's basically a physics trick, and it has to do with micro vibrations. That's what it comes down to. But a 12 or 13-year-old or even a 14, whatever, they don't know that. And so, they spook themselves with it. So Fairy Queen, Diane Hilbert says, I inhaled. Didn't every hippie? I don't know about that. My mom claims that she was a clean hippie.
Mm-hmm. She's never done it.
She was a hippie. My dad was not. He wasn't into that. But my mom was. She claims that she was a clean hippie. And I'm like, but Mom, that's an oxymoron, But she claims she was. All right, so let's get into some other stuff. Those are like the two really big, more recent ones, especially the Momo thing. I know we'll get into another big recent one. Is the Dear David thing. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to kind of bring Shana into it because you didn't know as much about those other two as you do Gore Orphanage. But I'll just say this for those that bug out a little early. Dear David is fake. He's coming out with a movie, if you can believe that. They picked it up as a movie, but it's a complete freaking fake. And we have a whole show on that, on Inside the Upside Down from last year. So you want to check that one out, but it's completely fake. In any case,
shocker.
Yeah, Gore Orphanage. So these are the ruins, and many people have heard about the legend of Gore Orphanage, where it was mean old man Gore. They locked all the children up every night. And one night, the orphanage caught on fire and all the children died and didn't escape. And now their souls are still burning there. And people see burning children at night when they go.
There's a movie.
It's like it's complete bullshit.
And I couldn't
watch
watch
that
it.
cheesy movie. It was such a.
Terrible,
they probably had like a 1995 budget, like $19.95 budget. Seriously, it was so bad. And yeah, they perpetuated that myth. But what pissed me off? Okay, they're busy perpetuating the myth. The orphanage in the area was Light of Hope Orphanage. There was an orphanage in the area. We'll get into that in a second. And when they were in the dining room, they had the two words light and hope on the wall. And I'm like, I mean, that's them trying to pay homage to the real story. And it's like, but you're perpetuating the lie. And I guess Supernatural, and I've only seen like half of season 1 of Supernatural, but somewhere along the way, Supernatural did an episode on Gore Orphanage. And from my understanding, they also perpetuated the lie. So,
of course they did. It's network TV.
Well, it's network TV, and that's what sells. That's what plays. So, there was no Gore Orphanage. Never was. There never was. Ever. So what these ruins are, we'll go back to that. What these ruins are that they say is the Gore Orphanage was the Swift Mansion. S-W-I-F-T. Swift. It's one extra letter, I guess, but it doesn't even sound like Gore. So where they get quote unquote Gore Orphanage is, that's the name of the road. Gore Orphanage Road. Except the naming came in two different phases. It was originally just Gore Road. And the reason why it was called Gore Road was because they needed to make, way back in the day, mid-1800s, they needed to make a map correction. A little wedge-shaped piece of land, wedge-shaped piece of land, that's called a gore. Because, as well as they tried to map everything out and survey everything back then, sometimes they made mistakes. So they needed to make this correction, which was called a gore. And so they named that road Gore Road. Years and years later, after that house had been lived in and abandoned, up the hill, an orphanage went into place. And so they appended the word orphanage after Gore so that people knew, oh, this is the road to take to get to the orphanage. But these ruins, I keep trying to hit the wrong button, but these ruins was actually something completely different from the orphanage. And that was this house. Whoops, wrong one. Where is it? I'm hitting that. Boom, off. There we go. Shauna's over here rolling her eyes. There we go. This is the Swift Mansion. And Shana, I know you've been here with me. All the stories about children on fire and things like that. I mean, what was your take on this particular site where this house had once been and are now ruins?
The first time that we went there, we were kind of in a rush.
Yeah.
And so I really, if I'm already in a rushed mood or in a rushed frame of mind, I'm not nearly as open to anything going on. I really didn't feel anything. The first time, all I felt was like just someone was watching from somewhere. The woods have eyes. You know, that's what I felt the first time. The second time, where we weren't quite so rushed and we're able to walk around in the ruins. And there were a couple of spots where I would stop and be like, you know, what happened here? And, you know, just feel like, and it's pretty flat, really. I mean, the area.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about that basement area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's flat. I mean, everything's sunken in.
Right. But like there was an area like where one of the bedrooms, I think, was after we found the floor plan.
Yeah.
You know, where there was just this one spot where I just kind of stopped and I was like, there's something happened here, you know, because it just, my body just felt different. And I kind of was a little harder to breathe there for a minute. And so I was like, well, I wonder what happened here, you know. And then you had pulled up the floor plan. We had a picture of the floor plan in the phone, and you realize that would have been like a spot where one of the bedrooms.
Yeah, it was one of the bedrooms. I remember the spot. Yeah.
So, you know, and the kids were sick. So, you know, was I picking up on something there?
These children here, we believe these are the Wilbur children, which is the family that moved in after the Swifts. I mean, it's possible you picked up on these kids.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. Nobody identified themselves. You know, I didn't really, you know, hear anything. Just, you know, but again, it just felt like mostly, you know, just the feeling of being watched. You know, you would stand there and all of a sudden you'd just be like looking up to the side or looking behind you because, you know, that's what it felt like. You were being watched by somebody. Yeah,
I've been there several times because it was only about, 20 minutes down the road from where I lived in Ohio. Yeah, you get that feeling of being watched. There was a time where it sounded like somebody walking in the woods over, by the well area. So there was a little bit of that going on there. It's a location that is mistakenly listed as one of the most haunted places in Ohio, and it's just not. It is haunted, mildly, but the most haunted, no, it's not. It's not on that list. It shouldn't be in any case. The sad thing is, we believe these are the Wilbur children. Can't be positive because it is an undated photo, but you see the wear and tear on the house, and the Swift family ended up leaving because all the money that they'd made in the railroad and sunk into the house, the railroad business went bad on them, and so they lost their money and left, and so the Wilbur family came in. There were 4 grandchildren that passed away. And of course, the grandchildren did spend time in this house. And they all died, 4 of them, in the span of 7 days of diphtheria. They didn't die in a fire or anything like that. They actually, most reports will say that they did not die in this house, that they died elsewhere. But after they passed away, the Wilburs were spiritualists, and they held seances in this house here, to try to contact the spirits of the children. The grandmother also kind of lost a bit of sense with reality, and she was doing things like setting the table for the children and stuff like that when they'd already passed. And so very, very sad how she was kind of losing her mind. And then they held the seances there, so that energy could possibly still be trapped in there. The house did actually burn down, so in a sense that is true, but decades later. So when the Wilburs finally moved in, it was not long after the children had passed away. The Wilbur family moved out of that house. It was like 1897 or something like that. The Light of Hope Orphanage up the hill came into play. It was like 1903. It was like 6 years later that they showed up. So the house down at the bottom of the hill is abandoned. They did buy the land around it because there is a nice field back behind there to farm. And so the children would go up and down that hill. There were a lot of reports of abuse. That part is true, of these children for the orphanage, but the orphanage, again, was up the hill. I know you felt something along that road. You had something in your ear on that road.
I was not expecting that at all. And I'm just walking along. And then like a split second before it happened, I just felt like this, something, was about to happen. And before I could even, finish that sentence in my mind, it felt like someone, all of a sudden my ear was lit up.
Yeah. that was wild. I mean, you just stopped right in your tracks.
I was just like, boom.
Unfortunately, I had my camera off because we had already walked all the way up that hill and got that footage, so I wasn't really running footage on the way back down. Sink Hollywood says, you two are awesome from Oklahoma. Thank you very much. I lived there for 3 years, so yeah, a lot going on in Oklahoma. James Griffiths, greetings, Mike and Shauna, much respect. Thank you, James. And Chuck Banks is saying that he was going to bug out pretty soon because there's a lot of knocking going on downstairs where he's at.
We go investigate your house,
yes,
Chuck.
We need to investigate Chuck's house.
Live on location.
Yep. So, yeah, so it's a really, really interesting area, and that road is so overgrown because it is an abandoned road. And this is something that just recently found out. So we have the video, the Gore Orphanage video that's out there that goes through all the information. And I did have a conversation with a gentleman who lived in the area, like his whole life, dating back into the I guess into the 60s. I guess he was a teenager in the 60s when this happened. There was a massive, massive storm that equated almost to a hurricane. It was 4th of July, 1969. And, people were getting ready for the 4th of July. They were at parks and they're talking about, the winds were so strong that people were getting picked up off the ground. This road is right pretty much up against the Vermilion River. And that storm basically caved in part of that road. And it's even worse now. There's parts where you're walking along like this much of a road and then it just falls off a cliff.
All of a sudden, there's like part of the guardrail is like hanging down. It's like, is this safe to walk on?
It's
so we're like
terrible.
Hugging the side of that thing. I was like, I don't feel so safe up here. But it mostly feels pretty sound. At least the parts where, there was like no give to it or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, we weren't going to fall off or anything, but, it's, and that always made me wonder, too, if there were other things that happened along that road because it's just, straight down to the river. Maybe there were some accidents along there. We know the kids used that going up and down from the fields. And I will say that the kids were probably, the kids that worked the orphanage were probably in this house when it was an abandoned house. And they were probably playing around in it. It makes sense to me. The real story of the orphanage, like I said, the orphanage of the Light of Hope Orphanage. These are the Sprungers who ran the orphanage. That's the little girl who escaped, and they went through a lawsuit in 1909. And they have the one woman there in the middle who was trying to be a teacher, but they so rarely were ever given schooling because the working on the farm came first. You see the house in the bottom right corner is the girls' dormitory. Looks a lot different than the Swift mansion, and again, it's up the hill. So if there was anything going on with the with the orphanage as far as spirits, I mean, that might be one there, which is now gone. It fell down years ago. There was just a foundation that was left, which has now been removed because they put in a new housing development. So it's all gone. The one thing that's left up there is the building that they use for a school and a church. That's still up there. Of course, we found those pillars that came up from the Swift mansion that were like along the side of the road. Those were brought up to use on the one property there. So the Light of Hope Orphanage was shut down in 1916. It was 7 years later, a fire. Remember, they say that the place burned down with the kids in and all that stuff. 7 years later, down the hill, the Swift mansion did catch fire and burned to the ground. There were no kids in it. It was still abandoned, all those years later after the Wilbers had moved out in the late 1890s. So, but that's basically urban legend, coming together and forming all of this stuff, And the thing about that is, you look at the newspaper headlines, 1923 when it burned, like haunted house destroyed by fire. So they already deemed it a haunted house at that point. So, did see some questions in here. So let's see. Let's get into some of these real quick. From Robert, what about the Goat Man legend? I actually don't know a lot about the Goat Man. Do you know much about the Goat Man?
I hunt ghosts. That's about all I do. I talk to spirits. I never really...
Yeah, but we encounter a lot of different urban legends and stuff as we go along. Like, there's a lot of Alton legends that we come across when we do things down there.
I do like local stuff. And then the other stuff I learn about by watching Friday Night Ghost Frights. That's pretty much. Or researching. Like, oh, what's this? I never really got that much into cryptids and stuff like that.
This is a interesting question here from Samuel. Even though a spot or location is a hoax, does it become haunted by using the collective conscious? Collective conscious, or even the collective, the collective unconscious would be grabbing things. And that's an excellent question. That's almost when you start getting into stuff like tulpas, where, with a tulpa, there's a legend or a story of something that that entity decides that it's going to take the persona of and kind of become it. So they may appear, physically to people as that entity is trying to portray. It's not going to have the same, like when you talk Slender Man, if that has become a tulpa, it wouldn't have the same abilities as Slender Man does in the little stories, unless it already kind of naturally has some of that stuff. So it will act a little different, but it will physically look like it. But I think, so if you have a legend, let's talk about this. If you have a place with a legend and people keep going to it to investigate the paranormal or try to contact some spirits, maybe they even come in with a Ouija board or something like that. I would think after repeatedly doing that would possibly invite something in. What do you think?
I believe that.
Now, it's not going to be what that legend was, I don't think.
It would be just like something else moving in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, it's haunted. It's just not necessarily haunted by what everybody thinks.
It's like the boat. There was, the actual human spirits that were attached to it. And then it was vacated. And then we came back. And the energy was different. Totally different stuff in there.
It was different. And there was somebody else that was in there. And yeah. From Miss I guess Miss Bethany Holly. Is that how I'm reading it? Do you ever cover urban legends or hauntings from other countries? Yes.
Yes, we do.
We do. If you check out, we have a international ghost stories playlist. So if you check that out, like Japanese Slitmouth Woman, Spring-Heeled Jack, there's a few different ones. Like even the Christmas one that we did had like a lot of different ghost stories and urban legends from other countries. So yeah, definitely. If you want to check out the international playlist, go check that out. And that kind of plays right into this from Rick, where we're the best place to start researching Gore Orphanage, our video. And I'm not saying that just because it's our video. Check out our video. I mean, it actually we did a lot of research on that.
Because this channel sticks to the facts and the actual truth and the history, rather than just handing you a ghost story and letting that be it.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of great resources out there that has parts of the story. We combined all of those parts together in that video, so it's like, I don't know, was it like a 20-minute video, something like that? One. Yeah, it's like one of my favorite videos out there. Just because of how much of the real, it basically intersplices the research that we did with us actually touring and investigating the area. So
looking up newspaper articles and stuff like that. There's the history, the truth itself is, it's very sad and it's very tragic.
Yeah, it has quotes from some of the kids that were there from the trials and otherwise. Interviews that some of the kids had given. The one came all the way from, because the Sprungers came from Indiana. He came all the way from Indiana with his little sister to live there. So, I mean, there's more information to find, but I would say use that video, take down notes, and do some additional research. Because you can actually, I mean, you could find stuff out there that gets into more details about the Sprungers and who they were and their background and all that stuff, which we didn't go that detailed into them, and we gave you some details. But as a first stop, I would say that video. It's just, we did a really good job with that one. Yeah, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but that one is a good one. So Betty Lange, why are so many places haunted by a lady in white? A haunted legend? ? It's you're seeing female apparition. Apparitions are white. I mean that's always my take. We saw a lady in white at the top of the stairs. Okay, you saw an apparition of a lady. Woman in a white dress is out. It's usually the way it is. I mean, a lot of those.
It's a pretty common color. Pretty, depends on the, what part of history you're talking about, what time frame, what they wore, for that era, or whatever. My very first spirit that I saw was wearing white. It was a little girl. She was wearing kind of a nightgowny kind of thing. It was white, long. No, there was another. Well, she wasn't exactly wearing white. It was kind of like an off-white, and dirty. But again, another similar, type of color, dress. Woman wearing white. But I've seen spirits wearing different colors too. So I mean, it just all depends.
Yep.
But ghosts, are typically white in stories. Especially the older ones. I guess all spirits were.
And like B3 Aerospace is saying, why is a known burial shroud for Amish and others and things like that? And I mean, that might be true. You might be seeing them in something they wore. I just have always took it as like when you see an apparition of a spirit, you usually see them as white and translucent, regardless of the type of clothing that they're wearing. I mean, I guess you've seen some colors, but I see a lot of shadow people. So, and somebody said something about shadow people in there. It's like, but you don't even necessarily see clothes with them. It's just black. So
saw a woman in the cafe wearing a multicolored apron.
there you go. Okay.
When I say multicolored, I mean that thing had like
You
every
mean
color of the
multicolored.
rainbow in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Donna's saying, I think Lady in White could be white mist as manifestation. Maybe. Tom McNicholas, is the Gore Mansion in the Helltown area? No. No. So, like where I was living at in Illyria, Gore Orphanage area, Swift Mansion is 20 minutes to the west. The Helltown area would have been like 45 minutes to the east. So they're like over an hour apart between each other. For Helltown is Boston Mills area, Brecksville, around that. So basically, if you drew a line from Cleveland to Akron, about halfway between there, that's where you'd find the Helltown area. Just look for the Boston Mills Ski Resort or Brandywine Ski Resort. Yes, there is skiing in Ohio. It's because that valley getting cut by the Cuyahoga River, and it's glorified hills, that they kind of run down. They're like bunny hills for the ski slopes in Alaska. All right, so let's get to it. I mean, we're already almost an hour into this, and we've covered 3 things, and I had a whole bunch of stuff. So, all right, let's see what else we can cover here real quick. I threw in... Let me undo that. So I threw in Valak here just because it was modern pop culture, and we recently did, some Valak stuff, just to, clear up some things, because everybody like responding to those videos was like, oh, but where does the nun come into play with Valak and all that? And it's like, the Valak is not a nun. The movies, keep doing these things, as far as like misinformation, that everyone now thinks that Valak, if you go into the demon lore, they think that it was a nun, and it's not. In the movie universe, in the fictional aspect of it, it took on the persona of a nun, but it's supposed to be this boy riding a 2-headed dragon. So there's just all this misinformation because of the movies. Now, you could make an argument of, does it really even exist anyways, because it's lore and legend that basically originated in these old manuscripts from hundreds of years ago. This is the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. Is that stuff even true, or is it just make-believe stories, fiction? I mean, there's, I guess, not really a way to know that. But it was never a nun, So I would, again, say refer to our different videos on that. But I wanted to throw that one in there because there's a lot of people that think that Valak the demon, was a nun, and it's just not. I did mention it earlier, the Dear David thing. So in this, I forget his name now. We have a whole Inside the Upside Down on Dear David, but it's another modern day hoax. He still insists to this day that it's true. So he started posting on his Twitter that he was seeing this boy around his apartment. His name was David. He's got his head crushed like this, doing different little haunted things around his apartment. That's one photo of him. This is another photo of him. I mean, the whole way the head is done, it looks like computer graphics, like somebody that's not necessarily an expert at 3ds Max, or Maya, which are 3D graphics programs that they might have a little bit of a skill, but they're not, an extreme professional. They'd be able to create that. But some of the pictures that he was posting, like about the cats at the door, like I said, this is all real quick. So, okay, supposedly there's stuff going on at the door, and the cats are checking it out, and the cats keep getting bugged out by this door. And these are supposed to be like back-to-back photos, or like within a couple minutes of each other or something. I can't remember all the precise details because it's been a while. But you can see that these are actually taken at 2 very different times of day. In the lighting's coming from different angles. You can see one is like more of like sunlight, where the other's artificial light, and it's just. But he's trying to perpetuate this stuff as being true, and he scored a movie deal with it. Greg Rinkin, yeah, cheap computer graphics there, absolutely. Diane Hilbert says she went to the bathroom and thought the show was over. Seriously? Come on now. Yeah, Katie Palmer, I remember that one. Yeah, he back in November, New Line Cinema picked up Dear David to make a movie out of it. But it's just it. Like I said, he claims to this day that it's all true and all of this stuff. And this is just 2 photos, well, I guess I had 4 photos of the stuff that he's posted, and it's clearly not. So it's unfortunate that he won't just fess up like, hey, I came up with a cool story, like Slender Man. I kept posting this stuff like they were doing with the Slender Man stuff, and came up with a story. I mean, the way he started it off, I was like, okay, that was a good way to get a story going. But he won't fess up to that. This is old school one, Cottingly Fairies. How real those look to you?
Yeah. Not so much.
Yeah, this is more of a historic one. But this is like back when photography was still new. I mean, at this point in time, photography had been around for like around 50 years. Earlier than this was like the Mummler spirit photography, which was just double exposure. This was a few decades later, and these are little cutouts. But at that time, it's funny. At that time, there wasn't enough known about photography in the masses that they believed it. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories, actually had a whole second set of photos commissioned. Like, hey, go out to the fairies again. I'll pay to have it done. And so, yeah, but it was, in the 1970s where they finally admitted that it was all a hoax. But, yeah, it's interesting. But that's a historic hoax. And then the Fox sisters. So this gets into the spiritualism movement, where they were doing, like the table knockings, the seances where they did the table knockings and all that stuff. And basically they had figured out a way to like move their joints in such a way that it would pop. And it would sound like, a knocking coming from the table. They originally did it as a joke to fool their mother one night. And because they fooled her so well, and she believed them, they were saying, well, we're talking to spirits. And so the mother started inviting people over from the neighborhood, and, they're kind of showing off. And so it just snowballed into, now they're going around with the, P.T. Barnum and his circus. And it became like a huge, big national hit. Well, it was finally like in the 1880s where the one sister was like, yeah, it was all a hoax. And this is the way we were able to do it. So, so those are a couple of historic ones. So I know I just kind of blew through those real quick at the end because we're already over our hour. So per Joe Grizzly, and this is a shadow person question. Is a shadow figure known to feed on negative energy? I mean, it can. I don't think that all shadow people are negative, for one. I think that just like people, some are good, some are bad. I think the bad experiences, of course, get reported more than the good ones. So I hear a number of those, but I also hear a lot where they're just hanging out and just curious and just kind of looking around, or I've had experiences where it seems like I've scared it. So, and other people report that stuff too. So very different. All right, what else do you guys have? So yeah, Diane Hilbert. Fairies. Yeah, the Cottingly Fairies. Now, we have seen actual fairies, and they don't look like that.
Yeah,
or maybe we've seen a fairy, if that's what it was.
I'm going to continue to refer to them as that because I can't not refer to them as that. I mean, they don't look like, well, we've been, shown that fairies are supposed to look like on TV, movies, books, lore, whatever. So Tinkerbell, I mean, we have this, idea of what they're supposed to look like, but then what they're supposed to act like. And, the stuff that, well, you saw more than I did, but was fairy-like in its behavior, or what we think fairy might act like. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep calling it that until something happens to convince me otherwise. I don't have anything else to compare it to, really. So
Joe's following up. It says, yes, is this the source of energy negative? I mean, no, not necessarily. Let's talk about the shadow people again. I mean, check out some of our other shadow people videos. I have a lot of videos on shadow people on this channel. Again, they could be negative, they could be positive. I think just because they look like a shadow doesn't mean that they are negative. That's just the way that they appear to our eyes, because instead of reflecting light, they are absorbing light. I believe most shadow people are interdimensional beings. There's a small number of, and I wouldn't even call them shadow people, but spirits that manifest that are shadowy in nature, like they're human spirits, and they're trying to come through, and they just can't quite manifest a full apparition, so they appear as a shadow. So, and I certainly wouldn't call those people negative. So,
no, I do think that they give off a different energy, though. It's a totally different feeling. Like, at least to me, what I'm like, whenever I see some shadow, I can usually sense that it's human in nature, but there have been a handful of times where I've seen shadows where I'm like,
well, yeah, a human spirit definitely has a different vibration than the shadow person. Mm-hmm. It's just different.
I guess it's a totally different entity.
Yeah.
It's different.
From Kathy Stiliento, Mike, do you and Shana know anything about the suicide force in Japan? Would love to hear some information on that one. Yeah, so that one, and it's sad. I mean, because of the legends associated with this forest, and it does legitimately happen. People in Japan do go to that forest to actually commit suicide. There are signs and all kinds of things like that out front now, because this is a very well-known fact that try to deter people from going in there and killing themselves. I doubt putting up a bunch of signs works. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people go there and do that. The Japanese culture is different than ours. From a very young age, the rigors that they are put through to succeed and become a productive member of their society is massive, and so they go through a lot of stress to achieve all the things that they're trying to achieve as a society, and a number of them can't handle it, and so that's where a lot of people decide to go to unfortunately take their lives. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but
no, but I was reading an article about it, though, not too long back.
Yeah. Well, it's in that. I think it's in that. That, what was it, Life magazine or whatever, that had that like most haunted places around the world.
That's a cool magazine.
It's a very cool magazine.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was in there. Yeah. So, all right. Robert Hanna, are elves actual real entities like the people in Iceland appear to supposedly claim? So we're getting to some different. I guess. Well, we had the fairies hoax, the Cottingly Fairies. So are elves real?
I've never seen one,
It
but
could be.
if if you're going to believe in some entities, you have to give the other ones thought.
This is the way I have for a number of years perceived this. Is that, of course, I say this a lot, that within legends are some sort of grain of truth. So when it comes to elves, dwarves, I mean, we call smaller people these days dwarves anyway. Leprechauns. I think they're all ingrained in a bit of truth that there was a smaller type of a humanoid person on this earth. Like they found that quote unquote hobbit type person in Southeast Asia, in the islands there. And the local folklore and rumors and all that basically had those human people kind of integrating themselves with the rest of humans there, and so they basically were bred out. In that, supposedly, you can tell who is descended from those smaller ones because of the features of the people that are there today. And so I think some of that is true in some of these other areas of the world, that maybe there were some of these other smaller human people around that, whether they died out, bred out, whatever, they're no longer around. But there were stories from a long, long time ago of seeing them in the woods or near the shore or wherever it was. And so those stories got worked into the local folklore, and once the people were gone, they became this mythical creature, or, mythical humanoid type figure. But they did once exist. So that's my take in any case.
Yep.
So, Town of Gordon, hobbits live. Yeah. William Ben, and Pygmies they're in South America. Denisovan hominids. Well, those are the tall ones. The Denisovans are really tall. They did come across. Recently a is a Denisovan with a trying to think if it was another human, or was a Neanderthal, where they found some DNA that was a combination of both. So they did see the interbreeding between races with that. So, but the Denisovans were really tall. You're like on the other end of the spectrum there. You could almost go more toward giants with them. So, all right, so I think we are going to about wrap it up here because we're getting off of. I mean, these are. I guess these are more. They're still legends, not really urban legends, which is the type. But these are like more like historic type legends, which are still very cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, South America for the Pygmies. I thought so. All right, so let's go. Like I said, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thank you, Donna, for Cheshire catting the chat. Thank you to our Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. So that would be Tom McNicholas, B3 Airspace, Zippy Davis, BD Flint, Pamela Queen, Joe Chandler, Andrew Cox, and Dustin Samario. Thank you, all of you, for that. If you're interested in the Patreon stuff, patreon.com/HauntedRoadMedia. We got all kinds of extras out there, which are pretty cool. We just did our Q&A video we put out there. So Betty says, Momo was good, Mike, on reporting. Thank you. Appreciate that. So I was just trying to get the facts out there.
It's a pretty popular video.
Yeah, that was like 90,000 views in a day. So
yeah.
in the first 24 hours. So I appreciate that one. It's only a little 3-minute video. It was just like, here's some of the facts. There you go. Stop fear mongering.
Yeah, hopefully it sets some people's, minds at ease. That like Just don't pay attention, to this stuff. I mean, pay attention to your kids.
Yeah.
If you got to keep track of what they're watching, or if you have to sit them down and be like, look, this is what's being said, this is what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, let your kids know, hey, if anybody ever says anything like that to you, I mean, don't be doing that stuff.
Don't do it.
But all the stuff about splicing the Momo into these YouTube videos and all that, it never happened. It's just that all that wasn't true. Unfortunately, there may come along somebody who actually tries to do shit like that, to try to say, oh, see, it's real. And it's like, he did it after the fact. So, yeah, just, be a good parent.
Yeah, don't parent like an asshole.
There you go. All right, everybody. You have a great week. Next week, we are from Mineral Springs, live from Mineral Springs. We're doing Edge of the Rabbit Hole. We won't be doing an Inside the Upside Down because it got really late when we did that. And I got to work the next morning. You got to get up and take Connor to school, all that stuff. So we're going to do one Edge of the Rabbit Hole next week. Maybe we'll make it a little bit longer or something.
Inside the abandoned pool.
The abandoned pool. Nobody ever goes live from down there.
No. So some of you in the chat room have already been there.
Yeah.
But some of you have not. And for those of you that have not, it is a very, very cool spot.
Absolutely. So, all right, everybody. We will catch you from Mineral Springs next week. Have a great night. Till next time.